Commander Zefkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator's Edge, watching the small blue planet grow larger on the view screen. His scaled fingers drummed against the command console as he reviewed the intelligence reports one final time. Earth, third planet from a yellow star. Single dominant species. Pre-interstellar technology. The assessment was routine, almost boring. Status report, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems. All battle groups are in position. Commander, reported as tactical officer, Lieutenant Vexthal. 300 ships arranged in standard subjugation formation. The planet's primitive satellites have detected our approach, but their weapons are laughably inadequate. Zefkar nodded, his reptilian features showing mild satisfaction. The Kytherian Empire had perfected the art of conquest over 5 centuries. They arrived with overwhelming force, demonstrated their superiority, and gave the local species 2 choices: submit or die. Most chose submission. The few who didn't were quickly eliminated. Have they attempted communication? He asked. Yes, Commander. Multiple frequencies, dozens of languages. The translation matrix is still working, but preliminary analysis suggests they're requesting dialogue. Standard procedure. Fear makes them chatty. Zefkar's mouth curved in what passed for a smile among his species. Open a channel. Let's get this over with. The view screen flickered, replacing the image of Earth with a human face. Male, middle-aged, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. The human's eyes were steady, showing no sign of the terror Zefkar expected. I am General Marcus Harrison, representing the United Earth Defense Council, the human said. We know why you're here. We've been watching your expansion across the galaxy for decades. Zefkar leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. Most species they encountered had no knowledge of the Empire's existence until the ships appeared in their skies. You have been watching us? He asked. How? We're not as primitive as you think, Harrison replied. We've had deep space monitoring stations for 70 years. We've seen what you do to worlds that resist. We've also seen what happens to those that surrender. Then you understand your situation, Zefkar said, his voice taking on the formal tone he used for all surrender negotiations. I am Commander Zefkar of the Kytherian Empire. You will submit to Imperial authority. Your governments will be dissolved. Your military forces will be disbanded. Your population will be relocated to designated sectors for integration into the Imperial workforce. Compliance will ensure your survival. Harrison's expression didn't change. We decline your offer. It was not an offer. It was a statement of fact. Then let me give you one in return, Harrison said, his voice calm but carrying an edge that made Zefkar's scales prickle with unease. You have exactly 1 hour to withdraw from our solar system. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war. The bridge fell silent. Zefkar could feel his crew's eyes on him, waiting for his response. In 5 centuries of conquest, no species had ever issued an ultimatum to the Kytherian Empire. The audacity was almost admirable. You threaten us with your primitive weapons? Zefkar asked, genuine curiosity overriding his anger. Your largest kinetic projectiles cannot penetrate our shields. Your most powerful nuclear devices are toys compared to our plasma cannons. We're not planning to use kinetic projectiles or nuclear weapons, Harrison said. Then what? 1 hour, Commander. I suggest you use it wisely. The transmission ended, leaving Zefkar staring at the planet below. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. The human's confidence was unsettling, but impossible to take seriously. What could a pre-interstellar civilization possibly possess that could threaten an Imperial battle fleet? Sensor sweep, he ordered. Full spectrum analysis. I want to know what they're hiding. The minutes passed in tense silence as the ship's sensors probed Earth's surface and orbital space. The results were puzzling. The planet showed signs of advanced technology, but nothing that should pose a threat to Imperial forces. Underground facilities, certainly, but that was expected. Orbital platforms, but they appear to be research stations rather than weapons platforms. Commander, Vexthal said, his voice uncertain. We're detecting some unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. And he paused, checking his instruments. There's something else. We're picking up movement in the asteroid belt. Movement. Small objects, dozens of them, adjusting their orbits. They're moving toward us. Zefkar studied the tactical display. The objects were tiny, barely registering on sensors, probably automated probes or mining equipment. Nothing that could threaten the battle fleet. Ignore them, he decided. Prepare for planetary bombardment. We'll give them a demonstration of imperial power they won't forget. But as he gave the order, a nagging doubt crept into his mind. The human general's confidence. The way he'd spoken about watching the Empire's expansion. The casual dismissal of their nuclear weapons as inadequate. What if they really did have something hidden? What if decades of preparation had produced something the Empire hadn't encountered before? Sir, the communications officer interrupted his thoughts. We're receiving another transmission from the planet. Put it through. Harrison's face appeared again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood dozens of other humans in military uniforms, their faces showing the same calm determination as their general. Your hour is up, Commander, Harrison said. Last chance to withdraw. Zefkar's doubts vanished, replaced by familiar anger. You will witness the price of defiance. All ships, prepare to... Wait, Harrison interrupted. Before you do something you'll regret, let me show you something. We've been tracking your fleet since you entered our solar system. We know your ship configurations, your shield frequencies, your weapon capabilities. We've had 70 years to prepare for this moment. Impossible. Our technology is centuries ahead of yours. In some ways, yes, but you've made one critical error. Harrison's expression grew cold. You assumed we'd fight you the same way everyone else has. You assumed we'd use the same weapons, the same tactics, the same strategies that failed against you before. And you haven't? No, Commander. We haven't. We've done something different. Something you've never seen before. The screen flickered, showing a view of space from Earth's perspective. The Imperial fleet hung in the void like a constellation of death, their ships gleaming in the sunlight. But something was wrong. The small objects from the asteroid belt were closer now, much closer. What are those? Zefkar demanded. Those, Harrison said, his voice carrying a note of grim satisfaction, are about to teach you why you should never underestimate humanity. The first impact came without warning. One moment. The Devastator, a heavy cruiser in the 3rd Battle Group, was maintaining formation. The next, its shields flickered and died as something impossibly small punched through its hull like tissue paper. The ship's reactor went critical, and the explosion lit up the void with brilliant white fire. Report. Zefkar roared, his calm shattered by the sudden destruction. Unknown projectile impact on the Devastator. Vexthal replied, his voice tight with disbelief. The object was barely 10 centimeters in diameter. It penetrated our shields and armor like they weren't there. Impossible. Nothing that small could. Another flash. The destroyer Merciless simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant by another tiny projectile. Then another, and another. Across the fleet, massive warships that had conquered worlds were being destroyed by objects so small they barely registered on sensors. Evasive maneuvers. Zefkar commanded. All ships scatter formation. But the projectiles weren't behaving like normal weapons. They changed course mid-flight, adjusting their trajectories to follow the fleeing ships. They accelerated beyond anything the Kytherians had ever encountered, reaching significant fractions of light speed in seconds. Commander, the science officer called out, his voice filled with awe and terror. I'm reading the composition of these projectiles. They're not missiles or energy weapons. They're just metal. Dense metal accelerated to incredible velocities. Metal? Zefkar stared at the tactical display in horror. You're telling me they're killing our ships with pieces of metal? Not just any metal. The spectral analysis suggests it's a tungsten-osmium alloy, incredibly dense, and they're moving at approximately 15% of light speed. 15% of light speed. The implications hit Zefkar like a physical blow. At those velocities, even a small object carried kinetic energy beyond imagination. The humans hadn't built bigger weapons. They'd built smarter ones. How are they achieving such acceleration? He demanded. Unknown, sir. The projectiles appear to be using some form of continuous propulsion system. They're not ballistic. They're actively guided and powered throughout their flight. On the view screen, Harrison's face wore an expression of grim satisfaction. Do you understand now, Commander? We didn't build bigger guns. We built physics itself into a weapon. Impossible, Zethkar snarled. The energy requirements alone would be impossible with chemical rockets or conventional propulsion. Yes, but we didn't use conventional propulsion. Harrison's image was replaced by a schematic that made Zethkar's blood run cold. Antimatter catalyst drives, microscopic fusion reactors, gravitational field manipulation. We took everything we learned from watching your technology and miniaturized it. Another ship died, then 3 more in rapid succession. The fleet that had arrived with such confidence was being systematically destroyed by weapons they couldn't even see coming. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving surrender demands from multiple ships. They're requesting permission to withdraw. Denied. Zethkar snapped. We do not retreat from primitives. But even as he spoke, he could see the tactical situation deteriorating. They'd lost nearly a third of their fleet, and the projectiles showed no signs of slowing. Commander, Vexthal said quietly, these aren't primitives. Look at the targeting system. The tactical display showed the projectiles' paths in real time. They weren't random, they were surgical. Each projectile was aimed at critical systems, reactor cores, command centers, shield generators. The humans weren't just throwing rocks at them. They were performing precision strikes with weapons that could adjust their approach in real time. They're using our own sensor data against us, the science officer realized. Every time we scan one of their projectiles, they're scanning us back. They're mapping our ship's internal structures and targeting our weaknesses. Then stop scanning them. Sir, if we stop scanning, we can't track them at all. They're too small and too fast for passive sensors. Zethkar found himself trapped in an impossible situation. To defend against projectiles, they needed to track them, but tracking them gave the humans the information they needed to make each shot more deadly than the last. How many projectiles are there? He asked, dreading the answer. Sensors detect approximately 500 objects in flight, Vexthal reported. But, Commander, he paused, studying his instruments. There are more launching from the asteroid belt, thousands more. The revelation hit like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just built a weapon. They'd built an entire infrastructure. For decades, while the Empire had dismissed Earth as a backward world, the humans had been converting asteroids into weapons platforms. They'd turned their entire solar system into a fortress. Sir, the communications officer said, General Harrison is requesting to speak with you again. Put him through? Harrison's face appeared on the screen, but his expression had changed. The grim satisfaction was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like pity. Commander, I'm going to give you one more chance. Withdraw now, and we'll let the remainder of your fleet leave safely. Stay, and we'll destroy every ship you have. You cannot be serious. We still have over 200 ships, and we have over 50,000 projectiles. Harrison's voice was matter-of-fact. We've been preparing for this encounter for 70 years. We've studied every battle your empire has fought, analyzed every tactical doctrine you've used. We know exactly how you think, how you fight, and how you die. You're bluffing. Am I? Harrison gestured, and the screen split to show a view from space. The asteroid belt was alive with activity. Massive structures that had been invisible to Imperial sensors were now revealing themselves, launching streams of tiny projectiles toward the fleet. Those are mass drivers, Harrison explained. Electromagnetic accelerators built into hollowed-out asteroids. Each one can launch a projectile every few seconds, and we have over 1,000 of them online. Simple physics, Commander. Force equals mass times acceleration. We may not have much mass, but we have a lot of acceleration. As if to emphasize his point, another wave of projectiles streaked across the display. This time, they targeted the fleet's supply ships and troop transports. The humans weren't just destroying military vessels. They were systematically eliminating the Empire's ability to sustain an occupation. "This is impossible," Zefkar whispered. No species has ever had 70 years to prepare for you," Harrison interrupted. "No species has ever watched you conquer world after world and learn from every victory. We're not fighting you the way the others did, Commander. We're fighting you the way you fight everyone else, with overwhelming force and superior technology." The irony was bitter. The Empire's greatest strength had become its greatest weakness. Their predictable tactics, their standardized technology, their assumption that superior firepower would always prevail. All of it had been turned against them. "What do you want?" Zefkar asked, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "I want you to understand something," Harrison said. "This isn't about territory or resources or political power. This is about survival. You came here to destroy us, and we're going to make sure you never get the chance to try again. You cannot hope to defeat the entire Empire with these weapons." "Can't we?" Harrison smiled, and for the first time, Zefkar saw something truly frightening in the human's eyes. "Commander, what you're seeing here isn't our only defense. It's just the beginning." The second wave of projectiles arrived like a storm of invisible death. Zefkar watched in growing horror as his fleet, the pride of the Imperial Navy, was systematically dismantled by weapons that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The projectiles moved with impossible precision, course-correcting at the last moment to strike exactly where they would do the most damage. "Commander!" Vexthol's voice cracked with stress. "The Annihilator is reporting critical damage to their primary reactor. The Subjugator has lost all power. The Dominion's fist is gone." The tactical display told the story in stark detail. Red icons marked dead ships, yellow indicated critical damage, and green showed fully operational vessels. There was precious little green left. "Sir," the science officer called out, "I'm detecting something else. The projectiles that miss their targets. They're not continuing on ballistic trajectories. They're turning around." "What?" "They're making powered turns and coming back for another pass. It's like they have unlimited fuel and guidance systems that won't give up until they hit something." Zefkar stared at the display in disbelief. The humans had created weapons that literally would not stop hunting until they found their targets. It was beyond anything in the Empire's arsenal. "How long can they sustain this?" he asked desperately. "Unknown, sir. But based on the energy signatures, each projectile appears to be carrying enough antimatter to power a small city. They could maintain thrust for hours, possibly days." Harrison's face appeared on the screen again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a woman in a white lab coat, her expression coldly analytical. "Commander, I'd like you to meet Dr. Sarah Chun," Harrison said. "She's the chief architect of our defensive systems. I thought you might want to understand what you're facing." Dr. Chun stepped forward, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone explaining a scientific principle. "The projectiles you're encountering are called autonomous kinetic interceptors, AKIs. Each one is essentially a miniaturized spacecraft equipped with fusion rockets, AI guidance systems, and enough antimatter to maintain thrust for extended periods." "Impossible," Zefkar breathed. "The computational power required for real-time guidance is substantial, yes, but not impossible when you have quantum computing arrays distributed throughout the solar system. Each AKI is connected to a network of processors that can calculate trajectories, predict evasive maneuvers, and adjust for relativistic effects in real time. You build an entire computing network just to guide these weapons?" "We built an entire civilization around preparing for this moment," Harrison interjected. "Every asteroid mining operation, every space station, every orbital facility have been designed with one purpose: to ensure that when you arrived, you would never leave." The implications hit Zefkar like a physical blow. This wasn't just a military defense. It was a total commitment of an entire species' resources to a single goal. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a weapon. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving distress signals from the 4th Battle Group. They're requesting immediate assistance." "What's their situation?" They're being hunted." The projectiles are following individual ships, wearing down their shields through repeated impacts. It's like they're being stalked by predators. Zethkar pulled up the tactical feed from the 4th Battle Group. What he saw defied belief. The projectiles weren't just attacking randomly. They were coordinating their attacks. Groups of AKIs would alternate their approaches, forcing ships to choose between multiple threats. When a ship's shields failed, the projectiles would exploit the weakness with surgical precision. "They're learning," he whispered. "The weapons are learning from each engagement." "Correct," Dr. Chin confirmed. Each AKI shares its data with the entire network. Every defensive maneuver you make teaches them how to counter it. Every weapon you fire gives them information about your capabilities. "We're not just fighting you, we're studying you. And adapting," Harrison added. "Commander, your empire has conquered 17 star systems using the same tactics, the same formations, the same strategies. We've had 70 years to analyze every battle, every victory, every defeat. We know how you think." As if to prove his point, the tactical display showed a new development. The remaining Imperial ships had formed a defensive sphere, a standard formation designed to provide mutual protection. But the AKIs were responding by attacking from multiple vectors simultaneously, overwhelming the formation's ability to provide covering fire. "Impossible," Zethkar muttered. "They're anticipating our tactical responses." "Not anticipating," Dr. Chin corrected. "Predicting. We've run simulations of this engagement thousands of times. We know exactly what you'll do in any given situation because you've done it before against other species." The crushing realization hit him. The Empire's strength, their standardized tactics, their proven strategies, their predictable responses, had become their greatest weakness. They'd become so set in their ways that they were essentially fighting a programmed enemy. "Sir," Vexthal said quietly, "we've lost 60% of the fleet. The remaining ships are requesting permission to withdraw." "Denied," Zethkar snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. "We cannot retreat from a single planet." "Commander," Harrison said, his voice carrying a note of genuine concern, "you're about to lose every ship in your fleet. Is your pride worth the lives of your crew?" "This is about more than pride. If we retreat, the Empire will send a larger force. A force that could glass your planet from orbit." "Will they?" Dr. Chin asked. "Let me show you something." The screen changed, showing a view of deep space. At first, Zethkar saw nothing unusual. Then the sensors adjusted, and he gasped. Scattered throughout the outer solar system were objects that registered as asteroids on passive scans, but were clearly artificial structures. "Stealth platforms," Harrison explained. "Thousands of them, positioned throughout the system. Each one is armed with long-range AKIs designed for interstellar travel. Commander, if the Empire sends another fleet, they'll face these weapons long before they reach Earth." "You're planning to attack the Empire directly?" "We're planning to ensure this never happens again," Harrison said grimly. "Every Imperial world, every military installation, every fleet base, we know where they are. We've been watching and preparing for decades." The magnitude of the human strategy became clear. They hadn't just built a defense, they'd built an offensive capability that could threaten the Empire itself. The AKI technology could be deployed anywhere in the galaxy, turning the Empire's own expansion against them. "Sir," the weapons officer called out, "the humans are launching something new, multiple objects much larger than the previous projectiles." "Size estimate?" "Approximately 50 meters in length. They're accelerating, but not as fast as the AKIs." Dr. Chin smiled coldly. "Those are penetrator platforms, designed specifically for heavily shielded targets. Each one carries 1,000 AKIs and enough antimatter to power a small fleet." "You're escalating," Zethkar accused. "We're finishing this," Harrison replied. "Commander, you have one final choice. Surrender now, and we'll guarantee the safety of your surviving crews. Continue fighting, and those platforms will crack your flagship open like an egg." Zethkar looked at the tactical display. Less than 40 ships remained from his grand fleet. The humans had reduced a force capable of conquering worlds to a handful of scattered survivors, and they'd done it with weapons that existed only in nightmares. "What happens to us if we surrender?" he asked. "You'll be repatriated to Imperial space with a message for your leaders. The message is simple. Earth is off limits. Any attempt to return will be met with the same response, except next time, we won't offer surrender. And if we refuse, then you'll join the wreckage of your fleet and we'll send a message anyway." The penetrator platforms were closing in, their massive bulk dwarfing even the Imperial flagship. Behind them, streams of AKIs continued their relentless assault on the remaining ships. For the first time in his career, Commander Zethkar faced a choice he'd never expected to make. Surrender to a species the Empire had dismissed as primitive, or watch his entire fleet die for nothing. The penetrator platforms closed in like massive predators, their dark hulls bristling with launch tubes. Zethkar watched the tactical display with growing desperation as his remaining ships tried to maintain formation. The humans had given him an ultimatum, and time was running out. "Sir," Vexthal reported, his voice hollow with defeat, "we're down to 37 ships. The Devastator's rage just lost containment. The Imperial might is drifting without power. Casualties are—" He paused, checking his instruments. "Casualties are approaching 80%. 80%. In less than 2 hours, the humans had destroyed most of an Imperial battle fleet with weapons that barely registered on sensors. It was beyond humiliating. It was impossible. Commander," the communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the Conqueror's Pride. Captain Vorth is requesting permission to activate the Nova Protocol." Zethkar's blood ran cold. The Nova Protocol was a last resort, a deliberate reactor overload that would turn a ship into a miniature star, destroying everything within 1,000 kilometers. It was meant for situations where capture was inevitable and classified information had to be protected. "Denied," he said quickly. "We are not at that point yet." "Sir, with respect, when exactly will we be at that point? We've lost our entire fleet to a species that shouldn't even have spaceflight." The question hung in the air like an accusation. Zethkar had built his career on the Empire's technological superiority, on the assumption that advanced civilizations would always defeat primitive ones. The humans had shattered that assumption with weapons that turned physics itself into a cudgel. "Sir," the science officer called out, "I'm detecting something new. The penetrator platforms are deploying some kind of containment field around our ships." "Containment field?" "It appears to be a localized gravitational distortion. They're trapping us in space. Our ships can't maneuver effectively within the field." On the view screen, Harrison appeared again, but this time his expression was different. The grim satisfaction was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like regret. "Commander, we're implementing containment protocols. Your ships are now held in place by artificial gravity wells. You can't escape, and you can't ram us. Your only option is surrender. You would trap us like animals. We would prevent you from doing something stupid out of pride," Harrison replied. "Commander, your crews don't deserve to die for the Empire's arrogance. Give them a chance to live. And if I refuse, then we'll demonstrate why the penetrator platforms carry the designation Planet Crackers." The threat was clear, but Zethkar found himself focusing on something else. The human general's tone had changed. He wasn't gloating or threatening. He was trying to save lives, even enemy lives. "You don't want to kill us," Zethkar realized. "No, we don't," Harrison admitted. "We want to survive. We want to protect our world and our people. But we don't want to become the kind of species that kills unnecessarily." It was an alien concept to Zethkar. The Empire conquered through overwhelming force and intimidation. Mercy was seen as weakness, compassion as a liability. But the humans had demonstrated overwhelming force and were still offering mercy. "Sir," Vexthal said quietly, "the crew is requesting guidance. They're afraid." Afraid. Zethkar had never heard that word used to describe Imperial forces. But looking at the tactical display, at the systematic destruction of everything he believed in, he understood their fear. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked Harrison. "Complete surrender. Your ships will be boarded by our personnel. Your weapons will be disabled. Your crews will be transferred to transport vessels and returned to Imperial space. In exchange, we guarantee the safety of everyone who surrenders. And me, you'll be treated as a prisoner of war under the Geneva Conventions. Humane treatment, no torture, no execution. You'll be repatriated along with your crews. Geneva Conventions? Human laws governing the treatment of prisoners and civilians during warfare. We may be defending ourselves, but we're not barbarians. The concept was staggering. The humans had rules about how to treat their enemies, even enemies who had come to enslave them. The Empire had no such concepts. Defeated enemies were either killed or enslaved. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving surrender signals from multiple ships. The Subjugator, the Merciless Dawn, the Crimson Blade. They're all requesting to surrender independently. Denied. Zethkar snapped. I am the fleet commander. Only I can authorize surrender. Commander, Harrison said gently, your captains are trying to save their crews. Don't let pride cost them their lives. This is about more than pride. If we surrender, the Empire will brand us as traitors. Our families will be disgraced. Our names will be struck from history. And if you die here, your families will never know what happened to you, Harrison pointed out. At least if you surrender, you can tell them the truth about what you faced. The truth. Zethkar looked at the tactical display, at the remaining ships surrounded by gravitational fields and stalked by invisible weapons. The truth was that they'd encountered something completely outside their experience. The truth was that the humans had redefined warfare itself. Sir, the weapons officer called out, the AKIs are continuing their assault. The Dominator's wrath just lost main power. The Ironclad is vending atmosphere. How long until total fleet destruction? Zethkar asked. At current rates, approximately 15 minutes. 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, the greatest fleet in Imperial history would be nothing but drifting wreckage, all because they'd underestimated a species that shouldn't have been able to challenge them. Commander, Dr. Chen's voice came through the comm system, I want you to understand something. The weapons you're facing represent a fraction of our defensive capabilities. We've been preparing for this encounter for 70 years. Every scenario, every possibility, every potential Imperial response. We've planned for it all. What are you saying? I'm saying that even if you somehow manage to destroy every AKI in the system, even if you somehow overcame our gravitational containment fields, even if you somehow reached Earth's surface, we have other defenses. Defenses that make the AKIs look like toys. The implication was chilling. The humans had built layers of defense, each one more sophisticated than the last. The AKIs were just the first layer. Sir, Vexthol said, his voice barely above a whisper, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. They're charging something. Something big. Surface-to-space weapons, Harrison confirmed. Orbital mass drivers capable of accelerating projectiles to 30% of light speed. Commander, we're not just defending our solar system. We're defending the principle that no species has the right to enslave another. The words hit Zethkar like a physical blow. The Empire had built its entire existence on the assumption that might made right, that superior technology granted the right to conquer. But the humans had turned that philosophy against them, using superior technology to defend the right to be free. What happens to the Empire, he asked, if we surrender, if we return with your message? What happens when they decide to send a larger fleet? Then we'll be ready for that too, Harrison said simply. Commander, we're not going to let anyone enslave us. Not the Empire, not anyone. We've spent too long preparing, sacrificed too much, to give up now. The penetrator platforms were directly overhead now, their massive bulk blotting out the stars. Inside their launch tubes, thousands of AKIs waited for the order to fire. It would be the end of everything. The fleet, the mission, his career, his life. Sir, the communications officer said, multiple ships are broadcasting surrender signals. They're not waiting for authorization. His fleet was disintegrating. His crews were abandoning the mission to save their own lives. The Empire's greatest strength, absolute obedience, was crumbling in the face of impossible odds. Zefkar looked at the tactical display one final time. 37 ships, thousands of lives, all depending on his next decision. General Harrison, he said, his voice heavy with defeat. I need to know something. The projectiles that destroyed my ships, were they warning shots? Harrison's expression grew somber. No, Commander. Those were precision strikes designed to disable your vessels with minimal loss of life. Warning shots would have been much smaller. Then what would a full attack look like? You don't want to know. The silence on the bridge stretched like a taut wire, broken only by the soft hum of life support systems and the distant rumble of damaged hull plates. Zefkar stared at the tactical display, watching the slow, inexorable dance of the human weapons around his dying fleet. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the fleet command console. All ships. He broadcast on a fleet-wide channel, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of imperial pride. This is Commander Zefkar. I am ordering a complete surrender to the human forces. The response was immediate. Some ships acknowledged with relief, others with stunned silence. A few captains tried to protest, but their voices were drowned out by the overwhelming acceptance of defeat. Sir, Vexthal said quietly, the humans are responding. They're sending boarding craft. Through the viewports, Zefkar could see them approaching. Sleek, angular vessels that moved with the same impossible precision as their weapons. They were small, designed for speed rather than intimidation, but they carried the authority of absolute victory. Commander, Harrison's voice came through the comm system. Our boarding parties are equipped with translation devices and medical personnel. Any injured crew members will receive immediate attention. Even in defeat, the humans were showing a consideration that the Empire had never offered to its enemies. It was a bitter irony that the primitive species was demonstrating more civilization than the galactic conquerors. The first boarding craft attached to the Dominator's edge with a soft metallic clang. Zefkar watched the airlock indicators change from red to green, then heard the hiss of equalizing pressure. The humans were coming aboard. Sir, the security chief reported, they're requesting to speak with the senior command staff. They're asking if anyone needs medical attention. Medical attention? Several crew members were injured during the engagement. The humans are offering to treat them. Zefkar found himself struggling to understand the human mentality. They had just destroyed most of an Imperial fleet, and now they were offering medical aid to the survivors. It defied every tactical doctrine he'd ever learned. The bridge doors opened, and the humans entered. They were smaller than Zefkar had expected, their bodies lacking the natural armor and scaled hide of the Kytherian species. But they moved with quiet confidence, their weapons held in ready positions without being overtly threatening. The leader stepped forward, removing her helmet to reveal a woman with short gray hair and steady brown eyes. She wore the insignia of a major, and her expression was professional but not hostile. Commander Zefkar, she said, her voice carrying the same translator-enhanced clarity as Harrison's communications. I am Major Sarah Rodriguez, representing the United Earth Defense Forces. Are you injured? The question caught him off guard. No, I am not injured. Good. We're here to facilitate the transfer of your crew to transport vessels. My medical team will treat any injured personnel, and our technical specialists will help stabilize any ships that are in immediate danger. You would save our ships? We would save your people, Rodriguez corrected. The ships are secondary. Commander, we need to move quickly. Some of your vessels are in critical condition. As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the fleet. The Conqueror's pride was losing life support, and the Subjugator was showing signs of imminent reactor failure. The humans hadn't just defeated the Imperial fleet. They were now racing to save the lives of their enemies. Sir, Vexthal approached cautiously. The humans are requesting access to our engineering sections. They say they can stabilize our reactors. And if this is a trick, if they're trying to capture our technology, Major Rodriguez overhead and stepped forward. Commander, your reactor technology is centuries behind ours. We're not here to steal secrets. We're here to prevent your crews from dying in containment failures. The casual dismissal of Imperial technology was almost more shocking than the defeat itself. The humans weren't just superior in weapons. They were superior in every aspect of engineering and science. How is this possible? Zethkar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Your species barely achieved spaceflight a century ago. How do you possess technology that surpasses the Empire's? Rodriguez exchanged glances with her team before answering. Commander, has it ever occurred to you that there might be other species out there? Other civilizations that the Empire hasn't encountered yet? Other species? The galaxy is vast, Commander. Your Empire controls 17 star systems out of billions. You've been so focused on conquering the civilizations you found that you never considered what might be waiting in the unexplored regions. The implication hit Zethkar like a physical blow. You've had contact with other species. Species more advanced than the Empire. We'd had contact with species that share our philosophy. Rodriguez said carefully, species that believe in cooperation rather than conquest. When we detected your expansion 70 years ago, we reached out for help. You form an alliance. We formed a network, a collective of species dedicated to mutual defense and the sharing of knowledge. Commander, what you encountered today wasn't just human technology. It was a combined scientific achievement of dozens of civilizations. The revelation was staggering. The Empire had been operating under the assumption that they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. But the humans had been part of a collective that dwarfed Imperial technology. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving transmission from Earth. General Harrison is requesting to speak with you. Put him through. Harrison's face appeared on the view screen, but behind him, Zethkar could see something that made his blood run cold. The background showed not just humans, but other species, tall, ethereal beings with luminous skin, crystalline entities that pulse with inner light, and creatures that seemed to exist partially in another dimension. Commander, Harrison said, I wanted you to see this before you return to Imperial space. You need to understand what you've encountered. An alliance, Zethkar breathed. A family, Harrison corrected. Species that have chosen cooperation over conquest, knowledge over power, growth over domination. We've been waiting for the Empire to find us, and now you have. Why didn't you contact us directly? Why wait for us to attack? Because we've been watching your expansion, Commander. We've seen what happens to species that try to negotiate with the Empire. You offer them two choices: submit or die. There's no third option for dialogue. So you chose war. We chose to defend ourselves. There's a difference. One of the alien beings in the background stepped forward, its form shifting like liquid light. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonics that seemed to bypass the translation system entirely. The Empire's time of expansion is over, it said, the words carrying a weight that made Zethkar's bones ache. You have encountered the boundaries of your authority. Beyond this point, there's only unity. Unity? The choice your species must make, Harrison explained. You can continue your path of conquest and face the combined resistance of dozens of allied civilizations, or you can choose to join us, to become part of something greater than domination. The Empire will never. The Empire will do what it must survive, Harrison interrupted. Just as we did. Commander, your people aren't evil. They're just afraid. Afraid of being conquered. Afraid of being enslaved. Afraid of being alone in a hostile universe. But you're not alone. None of us are. Major Rodriguez stepped closer to Zethkar, her expression earnest. Commander, we prepared a complete data packet for you to take back to Imperial space. Technical specifications, star charts, communication protocols. Everything your leaders need to understand what they're facing. And if they choose to continue fighting, then they'll face the same response you did today, except it won't be limited to one star system. We have allies throughout the galaxy. Commander, species that have been waiting for someone to stand up to the Empire. The tactical display flickered, showing a new image that made Zethkar's heart skip a beat. It was a map of Imperial space, but it showed something impossible. Other civilizations scattered throughout the region, civilizations that have been hiding from Imperial expansion. How many? He asked. Hundreds of species, Commander. Civilizations that have been watching the Empire's expansion and preparing their own defenses. You're not facing just humanity. You're facing the collective will of every species that refuses to be enslaved. The magnitude of the revelation was overwhelming. The Empire had been operating in ignorance, believing themselves to be the dominant force in the galaxy, while surrounded by superior civilizations that had been waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. "Sir," Vexthal said quietly, "the transport ships are ready. They're offering to return us to Imperial space immediately." "With full honors," Major Rodriguez added. "Your crews will be treated as prisoners of war, with all the rights and protections that entails. You'll be provided with food, medical care, and communication access to contact your families. And the message will be delivered through official diplomatic channels," Harrison said. "Commander, we're not trying to humiliate the Empire. We're trying to save it. Your people have a choice to make, and we want to give them all the information they need to make the right decision." Zefkar looked around the bridge one final time. His crew was preparing for transfer, their faces showing a mixture of relief and shame. They had survived an encounter that should have killed them all, but at the cost of everything they believed about their place in the universe. "General Harrison," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of defeat and revelation, "I have one final question. Those projectiles that destroyed my fleet, you said they weren't warning shots. What exactly were they?" Harrison's expression grew somber. "Those were precision strikes designed to disable your ships with minimal loss of life. We targeted your weapons and propulsion systems while avoiding crew quarters and life support." "Then what would a warning shot have looked like?" "A warning shot would have been a single projectile, fired past your fleet at a safe distance, traveling at 90% of light speed." 90%? "Commander, what you experienced today was us holding back. We could have vaporized your entire fleet in the first minute of engagement. Instead, we chose to disable your ships and preserve as many lives as possible." The final revelation hit Zefkar like a thunderbolt. The humans, this alliance of civilizations, had been merciful. They had demonstrated overwhelming superiority, while showing restraint that the Empire had never practiced. "That was a warning shot," he whispered, finally understanding the true scope of what had happened. "Everything you experienced today was a warning shot, Commander, a demonstration that conquest is no longer an option. The question now is whether the Empire will learn from this lesson, or whether they'll need a more comprehensive education." As the transport ships prepared to carry the survivors back to Imperial space, Zefkar found himself facing a truth that would reshape everything. The Empire's age of expansion was over, and the galaxy was far more complex and dangerous than they had ever imagined. The last thing he saw before the transport's viewports went dark was the Earth, blue and beautiful and absolutely unconquerable, surrounded by the invisible network of defenses that had just redefined the balance of power in the galaxy. The Empire would never be the same, and neither would he.